Marcus Thompson wasn't born into privilege. He grew up in a modest neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, where life was anything but easy. His mother worked double shifts as a nurse to make ends meet, and his father left when Marcus was just 6 years old. Despite the challenges, Marcus had always been a curious child, often tinkering with broken electronics he found around the house. By the time he was 12, he could take apart an old radio and put it back together again, sometimes even better than before. It was this knack for problem-solving that would later set him apart in ways no one could have predicted. School wasn't easy for Marcus either. Growing up black in a predominantly white school system, he often felt out of place. Teachers underestimated him, assuming he wouldn't amount to much because of where he came from. But Marcus didn't let their doubts define him. Instead, he poured himself into his studies, determined to prove them wrong. Math and science became his favorite subjects, not just because they were interesting, but because they gave him a sense of control. Numbers didn't judge you based on your skin, color, or background. They simply worked if you understood them. After high school, Marcus earned a scholarship to a prestigious university where he studied computer engineering. College was another uphill battle. Many of his classmates came from wealthy families and had access to resources Marcus could only dream of. Yet, instead of letting envy consume him, Marcus used it as fuel. Late nights in the library, skipped meals to save money, and countless hours coding became his routine. By the time he graduated, not only had he earned top honors, but he'd also developed a prototype for an app designed to streamline inventory management for small businesses. The idea behind the app stemmed from watching his mom struggle to keep track of supplies at the clinic where she worked. She'd often run out of essential items because the manual tracking system was inefficient. Marcus knew technology could solve the problem, so he built something simple yet effective. What started as a personal project soon gained attention during a campus innovation fair. Investors approached him, offering seed money to turn his prototype into a full-fledged product. That's how Technova Solutions was born. Over the next decade, Marcus transformed Technova into a powerhouse. The company expanded beyond apps, developing cutting-edge artificial intelligence software that optimized supply chains for major corporations. Their flagship program, SmartLogics, analyzed data in real time to predict demand, reduce waste, and cut costs by millions of dollars annually. Companies across industries, from retail giants to pharmaceutical firms, were eager to partner with TechNano. Under Marcus's leadership, the startup grew into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, earning accolades and awards along the way. Despite his success, Marcus never forgot his roots. He frequently returned to his old neighborhood, mentoring young kids who reminded him of himself. He spoke at schools, sharing his story to inspire others to believe in their potential, regardless of their circumstances. Your past doesn't dictate your future, he'd tell them. It's what you do today that matters. By the age of 35, Marcus had achieved more than most people dreamed of. He owned a sprawling home in Silicon Valley, drove luxury cars, and traveled the world for business meetings. But none of these trappings of success meant as much to him as the impact he hoped to leave behind. For Marcus, building Technova wasn't just about creating wealth. It was about proving that someone like him, a black man from humble beginnings, could break barriers and redefine what was possible. When Global Sky Airlines reached out to discuss integrating SmartLogics into their operations, Marcus saw it as the ultimate validation of his hard work. Global Sky was one of the largest airlines in the world, known for its global reach and commitment to innovation. They wanted to use his software to manage everything from fuel consumption to passenger luggage handling, promising to revolutionize air travel efficiency. The proposed deal was worth $150 million, a figure that would secure Technova's position as a leader in the industry for years to come. For Marcus, this partnership represented more than just financial gain. It symbolized how far he'd come since those days of fixing radios in his tiny apartment. As he packed his bags for the flight to New York, where he was scheduled to finalize the agreement, he couldn't help but feel proud. This was the moment he'd been working toward his entire life. A chance to sit across the table from some of the biggest names in aviation and show them what his team had accomplished. Little did Marcus know, however, that this trip would test not just his business acumen but also his principles. The journey ahead would force him to confront uncomfortable truths about the world and himself in ways he hadn't anticipated. But for now, as he stepped onto the plane, Marcus was focused on one thing: sealing the deal and taking Technova to new heights. The flight to New York was supposed to be routine. Marcus boarded the plane with a sense of purpose, his mind already rehearsing the key points he planned to make during the meeting. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, reviewing data, refining presentations, and ensuring every detail was perfect. This wasn't just another business deal. It was an opportunity to cement Technova's legacy as a pioneer in AI-driven logistics. As he walked down the aisle toward the first-class cabin, Marcus couldn't help but feel a quiet pride. After years of hard work, sacrifices, and sleepless nights, he had earned this seat, not just on the plane, but at the table where decisions were made. When Marcus reached his assigned seat, however, something felt off. A flight attendant greeted him with a polite smile, but asked him to wait while she checked his boarding pass. She glanced at it briefly before frowning and saying, "Sir, I'm sorry, but there seems to be a mistake. Your seat has been reassigned." Confused, Marcus double-checked his ticket. It clearly stated he was booked in first class. He explained this to the attendant, showing her the confirmation number printed neatly on the paper. But instead of resolving the issue, her expression grew more uncertain. "I'll need to speak with the gate agent," she said apologetically, gesturing for Marcus to step aside. Standing there in the narrow aisle, holding his carry-on bag, Marcus felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered situations like this, moments when his presence seemed to disrupt the expected order of things. Over the years, he'd learned to navigate these microaggressions with grace, choosing not to let them derail him. But today, standing in front of a crowd of passengers waiting to board, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. A few minutes later, the gate agent arrived, flustered and avoiding eye contact. "Mr. Thompson?" she began hesitantly. "There's been an error. Another passenger was mistakenly seated in your spot and we've had to move you to economy." Her tone suggested she was trying to soften the blow, but Marcus wasn't convinced. He pressed her for answers. Who was the other passenger? Why hadn't they been moved instead? The agent stammered, unable to provide a clear explanation. Finally, after some prodding, she admitted that the man currently occupying Marcus's seat, a white businessman in a crisp suit, had complained about being seated next to someone who didn't belong in first class. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. For a moment he stood frozen, processing what he'd just heard. Was this really happening? Had all his achievements, all his hard-earned success, amounted to nothing in the eyes of this stranger? The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a CEO worth millions, dressed impeccably, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had earned his place in the world. And yet, none of that mattered. To this man, Marcus was still other, someone unworthy of sharing space in the elite section of the plane. Despite the anger bubbling inside him, Marcus kept his composure. He knew better than to give in to the frustration threatening to boil over. Instead, he calmly reiterated his rights as a paying customer, pointing out that he had purchased a first-class ticket fair and square. The gate agent shuffled uncomfortably, clearly torn between placating Marcus and appeasing the other passenger. Eventually, she offered him a voucher for a future flight as compensation, an insultingly inadequate gesture given the circumstances. Reluctantly, Marcus accepted the reassignment, knowing that making a scene wouldn't change the outcome. As he made his way to the back of the plane, he couldn't ignore the stares from fellow passengers. Some looked sympathetic, others indifferent, and a few even seemed amused by the spectacle. Finding his new seat in economy, Marcus settled in, trying to focus on the task ahead. But the incident lingered in his mind, replaying itself over and over like a bad movie he couldn't turn off. Sitting in the cramped quarters of coach, surrounded by strangers, Marcus reflected on how far he'd come and how little progress society had made. He thought about the countless times he'd been underestimated or dismissed because of the color of his skin. From teachers who doubted his abilities to investors who questioned whether he was ready to lead, Marcus had faced prejudice at nearly every turn. Yet he had always found a way to rise above it, using those experiences as motivation to push harder and aim higher. This time, though, it felt different. The blatant disregard for his dignity stung more than usual, perhaps because it came at such a pivotal moment in his career. Here he was, about to sign one of the biggest deals of his life, and he couldn't even enjoy the basic courtesy extended to any paying customer. The irony wasn't just bitter, it was infuriating. As the plane taxied down the runway, Marcus stared out the window, watching the city shrink beneath him. His thoughts drifted to the upcoming meeting with Global Sky Airlines. Just hours ago, he had been excited about the partnership, eager to showcase Technova's capabilities and solidify their reputation as industry leaders. Now, however, doubt crept in. Could he truly trust a company whose values might align with those of the man who had tried to deny him his rightful seat? Was this deal worth compromising his principles? By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Marcus had made up his mind. This wasn't just about a seat or a single act of discrimination. It was about standing up for what was right. If Global Sky, or anyone else, couldn't see him as an equal, then they didn't deserve his business. For Marcus, integrity was non-negotiable. And if that meant walking away from $150 million, so be it. As the plane descended into New York, Marcus's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, frustration, and disbelief swirled together, but beneath it all was a simmering sense of resolve. He replayed the events of the flight over and over in his head, dissecting every detail, the dismissive tone of the flight attendant, the gate agent's evasive answers, and the unspoken implication that he didn't belong in first class. Each memory fueled his determination to take a stand. This wasn't just about him. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel small or insignificant because of their race, background, or appearance. By the time the plane touched down, Marcus knew what he had to do. He switched on his phone as soon as it was safe, ignoring the flurry of emails and messages from Global Sky Airlines executives, reminding him of the meeting. Instead, he opened his notes app and began typing. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, drafting an email that would change everything. In clear, concise language, he informed the airline's CEO that he would not be attending the meeting. No explanation, no apology, just a simple statement. I will not be proceeding with our scheduled discussion. Hitting send felt like releasing a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. For years, Marcus had prided himself on being diplomatic, on choosing his battles wisely and staying focused on the bigger picture. But this moment demanded more than diplomacy. It required action. Sitting there in the cramped economy seat, surrounded by strangers, Marcus understood that silence would only perpetuate the problem. If he wanted to create real change, he needed to speak up, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever faced similar injustices. When Marcus stepped off the plane, he called his assistant and canceled all his remaining appointments for the day. Then he booked a room at a nearby hotel to gather his thoughts and plan his next move. Alone in the quiet suite, he allowed himself to fully process what had happened. The incident on the plane wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a much larger pattern, from the subtle biases he encountered in boardrooms to the outright discrimination he faced in everyday life. Marcus had spent decades navigating a world that often seemed determined to keep him in his place. But today, he decided, would mark a turning point. The following morning, Marcus held a press conference at a prestigious Manhattan hotel. News outlets had already picked up fragments of the story after his abrupt cancellation of the meeting with Global Sky, and speculation was running rampant. Reporters packed the room, eager to hear directly from the man at the center of the controversy. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, Marcus stood behind the podium, exuding calm confidence despite the storm brewing around him. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady and measured. "Thank you all for being here today. I want to address recent events and share my perspective on why I chose to walk away from a $150 million deal with Global Sky Airlines. The room fell silent as Marcus recounted the details of the flight, the reassignment of his seat, the dismissive treatment by airline staff, and the underlying racism that had driven the decision. He spoke candidly about how it felt to be judged, not by his accomplishments or character, but by the color of his skin. This wasn't just about a seat on a plane, Marcus continued. It was about dignity and respect. It was about being treated as less than human in a space where I belonged. And if a company can't treat its passengers equally, how can I trust them to value my partnership? His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement or scribbled notes furiously. When Marcus finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. The reaction to his remarks was immediate and overwhelming. Social media lit up with hashtags like #NineStandWithMarcus and Respect for All as people around the world expressed their support. Journalists praised Marcus for using his platform to shine a light on systemic racism, while activists hailed him as a champion for marginalized communities. Not everyone agreed with his decision, of course. Some critics argued that walking away from such a lucrative deal was impulsive or self-indulgent. Others accused him of making a mountain out of a molehill, suggesting that the incident on the plane was merely a misunderstanding. But Marcus remained steadfast. In interviews that followed the press conference, he addressed his detractors with grace and conviction. "This isn't about money," he told one reporter. "It's about sending a message. If we don't hold companies accountable for their actions, nothing will ever change. We have to demand better, not just for ourselves, but for future generations." Behind the scenes, however, Marcus knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Walking away from the Global Sky deal meant losing a significant source of revenue for Teknova, at least in the short term. Investors were bound to have questions, and some might even reconsider their support. But Marcus refused to let fear dictate his choices. He believed in the power of leading by example, showing his team and the world that principles mattered more than profit. In the days that followed, Marcus turned his focus inward, doubling down on his commitment to building a company rooted in integrity and inclusion. He gathered his leadership team for a series of meetings, discussing ways to strengthen Teknova's culture and ensure that every employee felt valued and respected. They launched new initiatives aimed at promoting diversity within the organization, from revising hiring practices to creating mentorship programs for underrepresented groups. Marcus also announced plans to donate a portion of Teknova's profits to organizations fighting racial injustice, reinforcing his belief that success should always be shared. Meanwhile, the fallout from the controversy continued to unfold. Global Sky Airlines issued a public apology, claiming they were deeply sorry for the incident and vowing to investigate the matter thoroughly. Within days, several employees involved, including the flight attendant and gate agent, were fired. The airline's CEO appeared on national television, promising sweeping reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. While some applauded these efforts, others dismissed them as too little, too late. The damage to Global Sky's reputation was undeniable, with customers taking to social media to cancel flights and boycott the airline altogether. For Marcus, though, the most rewarding outcome wasn't the public backlash against Global Sky. It was the conversations the incident sparked. People from all walks of life reached out to share their own stories of discrimination and resilience. Teachers wrote to say they'd used his speech in their classrooms to teach students about standing up for what's right. Parents thanked him for setting an example their children could look up to. Even strangers stopped him on the street to express their gratitude, telling him he had restored their faith in the possibility of change. Through it all, Marcus remained humble, recognizing that his actions were just one small step in a much larger fight. He knew the battle against systemic racism wouldn't be won overnight, but he also knew that moments like this mattered. By refusing to stay silent, he had shown the world that courage and conviction could inspire others to do the same. And, as he looked toward the future, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't the end of his journey. It was the beginning of something far greater. The days following Marcus's press conference were a whirlwind of activity. News of his decision to walk away from the $150 million deal with Global Sky Airlines spread like wildfire, sparking debates in boardrooms, living rooms, and social media feeds around the world. For many, Marcus had become more than just a tech CEO. He was a symbol of resilience and integrity. People admired him not only for his professional achievements, but also for his willingness to take a stand when it mattered most. Yet, as the dust began to settle, Marcus knew that walking away from the deal was only the first step. Now came the harder part, navigating the ripple effects of his choice and ensuring that his actions led to meaningful change. Global Sky Airlines scrambled to contain the fallout. Their initial apology, a carefully worded statement issued within hours of Marcus's press conference, was met with skepticism. Critics accused the airline of performing damage control rather than addressing the root causes of the incident. When their CEO appeared on national television a few days later, he tried to strike a conciliatory tone, promising a thorough investigation and pledging to implement diversity training programs across the company. But viewers weren't convinced. Social media erupted with memes mocking the airline's attempts to save face, while hashtags like #NIGHTIME Boycott Global Sky trended for days. Despite the backlash, Marcus refused to gloat or revel in the chaos he had inadvertently unleashed. Instead, he focused on what truly mattered, using this moment to drive systemic change. He gave interviews to major news outlets not to criticize Global Sky further, but to highlight the broader issues at play. "This isn't about one airline," he told a prominent morning show host. "It's about recognizing the biases and prejudices that exist in every corner of our society and doing something about them." His measured tone and thoughtful insights won over even some of his harshest critics, who began to see him less as a businessman and more as a leader with a moral compass. Behind closed doors, however, Marcus faced challenges that tested his resolve. Investors who had once praised Technova's innovative technology now questioned whether Marcus's decision to cancel the deal was too risky. Some worried that his outspoken stance might alienate potential partners, while others fretted about the financial impact of losing such a lucrative contract. Board meetings became tense affairs, with executives debating how best to reassure stakeholders without compromising the company's values. Through it all, Marcus remained calm and resolute, reminding his team why they had started Technova in the first place: to make a difference. "We're not just building software," he said during one particularly heated discussion. "We're building a legacy. And legacies aren't built on compromises, they're built on principles." His words resonated deeply with his leadership team, many of whom had joined Technova precisely because they believed in its mission to empower people through technology. Together, they devised a strategy to weather the storm, focusing on transparency and doubling down on initiatives that aligned with Marcus's vision of inclusivity and equity. One of the first steps Marcus took was to strengthen Technova's internal culture. He convened town hall meetings where employees could voice their concerns and share ideas for making the workplace more inclusive. These sessions revealed valuable insights, including the need for better representation among senior leadership and clearer pathways for career advancement for underrepresented groups. Inspired by these conversations, Marcus launched a mentorship program pairing junior employees with seasoned executives, ensuring that everyone had access to guidance and opportunities for growth. He also established a task force dedicated to reviewing hiring practices and eliminating unconscious bias from recruitment processes. Externally, Marcus leveraged his newfound platform to advocate for change beyond the walls of Technova. He partnered with civil rights organizations to launch awareness campaigns highlighting the pervasive nature of racial discrimination in corporate America. One initiative, called Seat at the Table, encouraged companies to examine their policies and commit to creating environments where everyone felt valued and respected. The campaign quickly gained traction, with dozens of businesses signing on to participate. Marcus traveled the country speaking at conferences and summits, sharing his story and urging leaders to prioritize diversity and inclusion, not as buzzwords, but as core values. As momentum built, other airlines began reaching out to Technova, eager to collaborate with a company whose values aligned with their own efforts to improve customer experiences. Among them was Skylink Airways, a smaller but rapidly growing carrier known for its progressive approach to business. Unlike Global Sky, Skylink didn't just want to integrate smart logics into their operations. They wanted to work hand in hand with Marcus to develop new solutions tailored to underserved communities. After weeks of negotiations, Technova signed a groundbreaking $200 million deal with Skylink, surpassing the original agreement Marcus had walked away from. The partnership marked a turning point for both companies. Under the terms of the deal, Skylink committed to investing heavily in diversity initiatives, including funding scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in aviation and technology. In return, Technova agreed to customize its AI software to address specific challenges faced by low-income travelers, such as reducing flight costs and improving accessibility. The collaboration sent a powerful message: success and integrity could go hand in hand. For Marcus, the victory was bittersweet. On one hand, he was proud of what he and his team had accomplished. Walking away from Global Sky hadn't been easy, but it had ultimately led to an even greater opportunity, one that allowed Technova to expand its impact in meaningful ways. On the other hand, he couldn't help but reflect on the broader implications of the ordeal. While Skylink's embrace of inclusivity was encouraging, it underscored how far the industry still had to go. Too many companies continued to pay lip service to diversity without taking concrete action. Too many individuals remained trapped in systems designed to keep them marginalized. In quieter moments, Marcus thought about the man on the plane, the white businessman who had complained about sitting next to him. He wondered if the man ever considered the consequences of his actions or realized how profoundly they had affected someone else's life. Marcus didn't harbor any ill will toward him. Instead, he saw the incident as a reflection of societal conditioning, the subtle yet insidious ways in which prejudice was perpetuated. If anything, it reinforced his belief in the importance of education and empathy. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but every conversation, every act of courage, brought the world one step closer to a brighter future. By the time the year drew to a close, Marcus's decision to stand up against discrimination had transformed not only his own trajectory, but also the landscape of the tech and aviation industries. Technova was stronger than ever, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to driving positive change. Marcus himself had grown, emerging from the experience with a deeper understanding of his role as a leader and advocate. He knew there would be more battles ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had stood firm when it mattered most, and in doing so, he had inspired countless others to do the same. In the months that followed Marcus Thompson's bold decision to walk away from Global Sky Airlines, the ripple effects of his actions continued to reshape not only his own life, but also the industries he touched. What had started as a deeply personal moment of injustice on a plane had evolved into a movement, a call for accountability, respect, and systemic change. For Marcus, this chapter wasn't just about closing one door. It was about opening countless others, each leading to opportunities that aligned with his values and vision. Skylink Airways proved to be more than just a business partner. It became a true collaborator in Marcus's mission to create a fairer, more inclusive world. The $200 million deal they signed wasn't merely transactional. It represented a shared commitment to innovation and equity. Together, Technova and Skylink launched initiatives designed to break down barriers for underserved communities. One of their flagship projects was an AI-powered pricing tool that dynamically adjusted flight costs based on income levels, making air travel accessible to families who previously couldn't afford it. They also introduced community flights, discounted routes connecting rural areas to major cities, ensuring that no one was left behind in the age of global connectivity. The partnership quickly gained attention, earning accolades from industry leaders and advocacy groups alike. At a tech summit in San Francisco, Marcus stood alongside Skylink's CEO Rachel Chen as they unveiled their joint efforts to reporters and analysts. "This isn't just about technology," Marcus said during the presentation. "It's about people. It's about giving everyone, regardless of where they come from or what they look like, a chance to dream bigger and reach further." His words resonated deeply, drawing applause from the audience and sparking discussions about how businesses could do more to serve marginalized populations. But the impact of Marcus's stance extended far beyond his work with Skylink. Across the aviation industry, other companies began reevaluating their practices, spurred by both public pressure and the fear of losing market share to competitors championing diversity. Major airlines rolled out new training programs aimed at addressing implicit bias among staff, while smaller carriers pledged to diversify their leadership teams. Even airports got involved, implementing measures to improve accessibility for passengers with disabilities and creating spaces specifically designed for travelers from diverse cultural backgrounds. Marcus didn't stop there. Recognizing the power of his platform, he expanded his advocacy beyond the corporate world. He founded the Marcus Thompson Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering underrepresented youth through education and mentorship. The foundation provided scholarships for students pursuing careers in STEM fields, hosted coding workshops in underserved neighborhoods, and partnered with schools to develop curricula focused on entrepreneurship and financial literacy. Marcus often visited these programs himself, speaking to students about perseverance, resilience, and the importance of staying true to your principles. One particularly memorable visit took place at his old high school back in Chicago. Walking through the familiar hallways brought back a flood of memories: the late nights spent studying in the library, the teachers who doubted him, the classmates who teased him for dreaming too big. Standing in front of a packed auditorium, Marcus shared his journey openly, holding nothing back. He talked about the struggles he faced growing up, the discrimination he encountered throughout his career, and the pivotal moment on the plane that changed everything. When he finished speaking, the room erupted in applause and dozens of students lined up to ask questions or thank him for inspiring them. "It's easy to feel like the odds are stacked against you," Marcus told them. "But remember this: every challenge you face is shaping you into someone stronger, smarter, and more capable than you were before. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong, not in first class, not in the boardroom, not anywhere. You have the right to take up space, to chase your dreams, and to demand respect." As the years went by, Marcus's influence grew exponentially. He became a sought-after speaker at conferences, universities, and corporate events, known for his ability to inspire audiences with stories of grit and grace. His memoir, Seat at the Table: A Journey Toward Justice, became a bestseller, chronicling his rise from humble beginnings to becoming one of the most respected voices in tech and activism. Proceeds from the book went directly to the Marcus Thompson Foundation, enabling it to expand its reach and impact even further. Technova thrived under Marcus's leadership, evolving into a global powerhouse synonymous with innovation and integrity. The company's software revolutionized industries beyond aviation, from healthcare to retail, earning accolades for its role in driving efficiency and sustainability. Yet, despite its success, Marcus never lost sight of what truly mattered. Every decision he made, whether hiring new talent, launching a product, or entering a partnership, was guided by the same core values: fairness, inclusivity, and respect. By the time Marcus turned 40, he had achieved more than he ever imagined possible, but he knew his work was far from over. Racism, inequality, and injustice still persisted, manifesting in different forms across society. There were days when the weight of these challenges felt overwhelming, when Marcus questioned whether his efforts were enough. On those days, he reminded himself of the faces he'd seen at his foundation's events: young boys and girls brimming with potential, eager to rewrite their futures. Their hope fueled his determination to keep pushing forward, no matter how daunting the road ahead might seem. Looking back on his journey, Marcus realized that the defining moments of his life hadn't been the deals he closed or the awards he received. They were the moments when he chose to stand up, speak out, and lead by example. That day on the plane had been one such moment, a crossroads where he could have stayed silent or walked away quietly, but instead chose to fight for something greater than himself. It was a decision that cost him dearly in the short term but ultimately opened doors he never thought possible. Today, Marcus is celebrated not just as a successful entrepreneur, but as a trailblazer who dared to challenge the status quo. His story serves as a reminder that true leadership isn't about titles or wealth. It's about using your voice and resources to make the world a better place. Whether mentoring young innovators, advocating for policy changes, or simply listening to someone's story, Marcus continues to show up, day after day, committed to leaving a legacy rooted in kindness and justice. And perhaps that's the most powerful lesson of all. Success isn't measured by what you achieve for yourself. It's measured by the lives you touch along the way. For Marcus Thompson, the journey has always been about lifting others as he climbs, proving that no matter where you start, you can rise above adversity and create a future defined not by limitations but by limitless possibility.